So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Safe Workplaces Dialogues, Lockubator's monthly conversation series, where we bring together HR leaders, legal experts, compliance professionals, and change makers to explore how we can build safer, smarter, and forward thinking workplaces. I'm Shrimoy, the Chief Content Officer at Lockubator, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Now, for those who are joining us for the first time, Lockubator is an online workplace compliance platform that helps organizations build safe, inclusive, and future ready workplaces. At the heart of our platform is our secure complaint redressal system, which enables organizations to handle sensitive workplace issues with confidentiality. For example, if there's a posh complaint, it goes to the right authority, is handled in the right manner, and is resolved quickly. We also offer a wide range of e-learning courses on topics like POSH, DEI, data protection, and IP workplace ethics, along with customizable policy templates, analytics tools that gives you real-time insights into compliance and engagement. Now, our theme for today is Walking the Talk, which is about ethics and workplace code of conduct. We're going to explore how ethics move from paper to practice and how we can build a culture that truly reflects our values every day. Now, we're joined by three fantastic speakers. Let me introduce them. We have Chandra Bhatia with us. Chandra is a senior leader for workplace integrity and governance at Cimpress, where she heads the finance controllership for India and also serves as the presiding officer of the IC for POSH. Her work spans beyond balance sheets. She leads initiatives that embed integrity into everyday business practices, whether it's through financial compliance, conduct enforcement, or enabling a culture of psychological safety. From implementing automated policy enforcements, spearheading sensitization in hybrid workspaces, to driving cross-functional governance accountability. She leads with integrity, ensuring that decisions are driven by values and not just checklists. Welcome, Chandra.
Thank you so much, Srimay, for this warm welcome. I think if I may just add, so the roles that you described, these roles have actually given me a front row seat to see how culture, systems, and integrity intersect in an organization. And being here today, while I'm representing myself as a senior leader overseeing workplace integrity and governance, I think it's a mouthful to say, but what it really means is that my job isn't just to make sure that policies exist in the organization. It is also to ensure that they are actually lived, practiced, and trusted by the organization's employees. So thank you so much for having me here.
It's a pleasure and absolutely right what you said. And we knew it you would be the right person for this. Thanks and welcome once again. We also have with us Wristy. Wristy is a visionary people and culture expert known for blending creativity with impact-driven HR strategy. With a career spanning over 15 years across India, the US, UK, Europe, and beyond, she has partnered with businesses across sectors, including AI, tech, consulting, retail, fashion, education, and social impact. Her expertise spans HR frameworks, labor law, compliance, employee experience, and governance, supporting high growth organizations across global landscapes. With a strong track record in strategic HR leadership, Wristy brings a unique ability to pivot between strategy and hands on execution, making her a sought after voice in conversations around organizational growth, transformation, and people first leadership. Thank you, Wristy, for joining today. We're really grateful to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Shimoy and Lockubator. It's a pleasure to be here. And, frankly, I've not heard those words also that you described right now. So just in a simple word, when we describe ourselves, it's like more of creating experience for everyone inside and outside the organization, whatever connects they might have today, yesterday, or in future. So I think that's what I have been doing in 15 plus years of experience.
Absolutely. So glad to have you with us, Wristy. We also have Prakhar Pathak with us. Prakhar is a seasoned HR professional with deep expertise in workplace compliance, employee relations, and organizational governance. He began his career with a Big Four firm in its people consulting practice, where he gained a strong foundation in HR transformation and advisory. Currently at Gameskraft, Prakhar continues to lead the Employee Relations Charter while also overseeing policy formulation, including the Code of Conduct and Governance frameworks. In addition, he drives campus recruitment, supports performance and rewards, and leads HR operations, ensuring all people practices are aligned with regulatory standards and reflect the company's commitment to a safe, fair, and inclusive workplace. Big welcome to you, Prakhar. Very happy to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Shrimoy, for such a kind introduction. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and I'm grateful to the Locubator team as well for providing me with this opportunity to interact with the like-minded people. And I look forward to having an engaging and meaningful conversation today around workplace compliance and safety.
Likewise, Prakhar. Thank you so much. All right, so let's jump right into our first round, which is about ethics in everyday decisions. Now, we often think of ethics as something formal, codes and policies, but more often they show up in small everyday decisions. So let's explore what that looks like in real life. So, my first question is to you, Chandra. Can you share some real life examples of everyday ethical gray areas employees often struggle with at work?
Yeah, thanks, Srimay. I think it's a very valid question. And as you mentioned, small things. So what happens typically is that any ethical culture, it's not just tested in the policies or the manuals that we create for our employees. It's also tested in the quiet choices that people make when no one's even watching them. So if I have to give you a few examples of it that I've like personally encountered at our organization, um, although none of them triggered any kind of audit, but it had cultural consequences. So, first example that I can think about is a senior leader who repeatedly books international flights through a personal agent, bypassing the approved vendor that the organization has. This is for third party vendors. And the reason is like just to save time. There's no fraud being conducted over here, just to be clear. But the same leader denies their team members out of policy bookings just for the sake of being non-compliant. So you see how that message gets passed on to the team members. There's one set of rules for the senior leaders, another set of rules for them. If I take another example, say a junior employee, they're exaggerating or expanding their weekend stay during a business travel, saying it was just to recover from the overall week. Um, Although you understand that it may have been like a personal holiday, um, because the manager is okay with it, approves it, it gets reimbursed. Nobody gets too much in depth into it. But think about it, the real problem is not the money here. It's the belief that you're smartly bending the rules of the organization, and people admire that. Uh, Another example that I can think about is a people manager who's privately discouraging a team member from raising a posh concern because the other person is well connected, or these things spiral fast, citing those kind of comments. Think about it, that one single comment from the manager would have created distrust of that employee in the entire organization's process, and not just the manager himself. So we often categorize these things as gray areas, but when leadership stays silent on these things, those areas kind of become the norm for the organization. And so in our organization, we began doing something simple but powerful, like a monthly functional meetings. We started sharing anonymized snapshots of different scenarios that we've encountered. Could be like in brief, but real stories of decisions that we got right or sometimes got wrong. And it's made ethics feel not just theoretical, but in practical manner. So it's about the decisions that we decide to tolerate.
Absolutely. And those are such relatable examples, Chandra. Thank you for breaking it down so clearly. Moving on to the next question for you, Wristy. What's one simple habit leaders or managers can build into their week to show that ethics and conduct truly matter?
So, a very valid question and related to what Chandra just shared. So, something, this is something that I heard while I was working at Zippin, my last full-time stint as director, India director. This is by Ben Horowitz, a venture capitalist. Culture is how your company behaves when no one is looking. So something based on that, an inspiration that one powerful habit came as ethics moment, and not as a survey, not as interviews or something, but during the weekly team huddles and check-in. Hence, not by HR, by anyone and everyone that are organizing one-to-ones, both formal and informal. So, just 5 minutes where a leader reflects on the real decision, shares a dilemma they navigated, or highlights someone who acted with integrity. It sets a tone. As rightly said by Chandra, ethics isn't just a policy. It's part of our day-to-day work. So, something at Zippin we introduced was a quick value moment during leadership huddles. Asking questions like, did we face any ethical gray areas this week or this bi-weekly? Or is there a decision we could have made more inclusively? Similarly, other thing that we introduced at Zippin was blocking 15 minutes each week to walk the floor, virtually or physically, because we were a remote first organization. So, but there were still offices and we workspaces. And hence checking in with our team, not just on what they are doing, but how they are doing. It's not only the end result, but the process matters. Ask value-based questions like, was there a decision this week that felt tricky? Or did anything came up that didn't sit right with you as a person, as an individual, not professionally, but also personally? These micro moments go a long way in showing that ethics and conduct aren't just posters words. They are something that are ongoing. They are a muscle on which we build the culture of an organization. And also, it reflects our own values. Recently, I read somewhere, it was written by Satya Nadella. The C in CEO stands for culture. You're not the controller of decisions, you are the curator of values.
That's wonderful. Now that we have heard about leaders and managers, Prakhar, the next question for you is what's one thing HR teams can do proactively to make employees
The recording
feel
has
safe and
stopped.
supported when facing an ethical dilemma?
Okay. So, a genuine and indeed a question that is many a times asked to me on multiple platforms as well. So, one
This
of the
meeting
things
is
that
being recorded.
I would say is very important from an HR perspective is, and to make those employees feel safe and supported is to create an environment which basically is where they can feel that yes, HR is a trustworthy advisor, a confidant on whom they can confide these difficult questions that they may be facing. Now, that's where I would say that while we say that, yes, creating a safe environment is something that almost everyone would be doing, here at Gameskraft, we believe that the starting point for that is we ourselves being sensitive enough and ensuring that whenever such matters are coming, we deal with them with utmost sensitivity and ensure that confidentiality is maintained. At the same time, I would also say that it's equally important that people also realize are well aware of what would the next steps be when they flag out any of the ethical dilemmas. And that's where maybe I have seen in my experience across the three organizations I work, that this is where the ball gets dropped, because while we hear them, we do not set the expectations. So that's very important. A very simple and a very recent instance that came across with me was where an employee came forward with some concern that they had, or rather, I should say, a doubt that they had. And while they told n number of times that I'm just letting you know and all of these things, but the thought that we had was very clear that towards the end of that conversation is where, from a conclusion perspective, I not just told them that this is some of the things that you can do. At the same time, I set that expectation that please understand that given we have to improve upon these things, if at all they are also happening, not taking your name or anyone else's name, we will maintain that confidentiality. But it's important that I flag this to my internal stakeholders so that this matter is addressed in an appropriate manner. Now, how this helps is it not only builds trust, but at the same time, employees also well aware how the process works. And the second part being then, like in our case, we actually ensure that whenever we have these one-on-one connects or a team meeting or maybe a town hall as well, is where in each of these sessions we talk about these I would say the so-called difficult topics, where we tell them that if you face any dilemma, these are the people you can reach out to. Be comfortable and understand that this company holds a non-retaliatory policy, that should you highlight something which is genuine, then be assured that we will be there with you till the last moment.
Right, right. Really useful food for thought. Like make them feel as comfortable and safe as you could. Great. Now let's talk about people in the round two, which is more about respect, relationships, boundaries. Let's see how employees or everyone should interact, how we speak, and how we handle situations that can get tricky. So the first question for you, Chandra, is if someone makes a disrespectful comment during a meeting, what's the best way to address it on the spot without letting it become a pattern or seem acceptable?
Okay. Thanks, Shrimay. I think the real danger of misconduct is not the action, but it is the silence that follows. So maybe I can share a moment, and that kind of changed how I lead meetings. So we were in a cross-functional budget review meeting, and one senior colleague who kind of was frustrated at certain point in time, and they snapped at the junior team member, and they just said that you clearly don't understand what strategic thinking looks like. Now, there were people in that meeting on the video call. People typically go into a freeze mode in such scenarios. Uh, while the camera stayed on, but nobody said a word. Um, the person who was blamed tried explaining, but their comments were kind of like brushed past. But after the call, four people messaged me separately that this was harsh, and I wasn't sure if I can speak up at that moment, uh, or whether it was my place to say anything or not. So this is kind of like the cultural cost that we pay when people don't know that they are allowed to defend somebody's respect. And so for me, the next step that I followed through was so whenever the next meeting happened, I kind of called in at least the senior folks in that from that meeting a little early, and just mentioned it to them that let's be clear that if silence follows a personal attack, then that silence is actually being complicit to it. And leadership is not just about owning the outcome; it's also about owning the tone and how you communicate things down the line. So what we could have done to avoid that situation to begin with was like ensure that all colleagues in the team meeting are aware of what our organizations. We have resources in our organization which talks about how you behave, what to do, what not to do, and these are typically things which are made available when you newly join the organization. Of course, people read, people forget, or some people may not even read because we are a remote first organization. We cannot control everyone. And so we kind of direct people towards that, make sure that it's not just a document that is lying somewhere in some resource, but there is some manner in which we are bringing it like maybe once a quarter like a refresher, or once in 6 months like a refresher, so that that culture guideline or boundary that we're trying to set, that gets maintained. And some of the things that we included, and it's more like a document that keeps enhancing as in how our journey keeps happening. So few things that we added in it, from the aspect, like about what phrases to use or not use when you're in a heated moment, while being respectful. So like, so this is more to ensure that that silence which follows, we are avoiding that silence, awkward silence. So few things that we guide our people on are like, let's take a step back, and just mention that that sounded personal and not productive. Or you can probably say something like, the comment might shut people down, but can we reframe it instead? Or you know just reminding people that we are debating ideas and not people. And this last one that I just mentioned, this one we kind of added like a month back to it. And this is this so we had like a workshop within the finance function, and it kind of came up from there. Peace with people, aggression with process. And we kind of reworded that and put it in, like, let's remember we're debating ideas and not people. So these are the few things that we've tried managing at our end. Um, so calling out doesn't necessarily need to be confrontational, but it kind of needs to be clear. So the moment and how we respond, that raises the bar for everyone then.
Absolutely. I mean, when you said that it's not the misconduct, but the silence that follows, it really hit hard. I mean, I'm sure all of us have faced it somewhere, and it's so relatable. And the phrases that you mentioned, wonderful. I wish I had just noted it down. Maybe I'll get back to you later. I mean, so nice. I mean,
Thank you.
wonderful. I mean, amazing what your team is doing.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the next question for you, Wristy. If an employee is working with a friend or family member, formally or informally, how can they be transparent and avoid any real or perceived conflict of interest?
Sure. So, transparency at the end of the day is everything while we are defining a culture. Transparency begins with intentional closures, and intentional closure comes in when we know that there is not going to be any retaliation, there is no unsaid nepotism, or it's not going to harm us in any manner. A great example that I share usually whenever we speak about this in all my meetings is from Netflix. So if we have seen its culture deck, one of the slides states, act in Netflix best interest, avoid conflicts of interest and disclose them if in doubt. And on next slide, they have shared the details of the person for each location on whom to reach and the examples of the doubts. And some of the examples were, even I could not think of. So if I start from there, transparency is the antidote to assumption. If someone is working with a friend or a family member, we always say declare it early through a formal disclosure form or conversation with HR, manager, leader, anyone. Rescue themselves from an evaluation, hiring, decision-making process related to that individual and keep the documentation clear. Leaders on their part need to normalize the transparency. We speak about a lot of policies to be transparent. I see a lot of organizations having transparency as a part of their value system. But what are the people doing there? We are expecting employees to do a lot of things. But what about the leaders? So it's a responsibility of the leaders. They should create a culture where this transparency is actually encouraged, not penalized. Reassuring folks that flagging a relationship doesn't mean suspicion. It's just a way to ensure, fairness and clarity. So one example that I can state is for Sanam S4. I was working there as a consultant to a lot of global clients. And I was supporting several global client accounts where close-knit teams often had overlaps in networks, which of course, we also got to know during a networking event every time we were not clear. So we simply implemented a simple conflict of interest declaration form. It was not a policy. not a policing tool, but as a safe way to flag personal relationships early. So, we worked on the tone of it. How we framed it was, we trust your judgment. Just help us stay ahead of any concerns by keeping things open. And for leaders, avoid assigning direct reporting roles between connected individuals and rotate review responsibilities when needed. So even if we are working in the same team, talent is everywhere. And just because we know someone, we should not have, stop having talent. Just make sure they're not reporting into each other. And for some reason, if they're reporting, then rotate the reviews and have the reviews going on. Something lately that I heard in one of the workshops was through Unilever as an example. Their code of business principle requires all potential conflicts, personal or professional, to be disclosed, even if informal, to preserve integrity. This is something that was highlighted as a statement. It's not about doubting someone's ethics. It's about ensuring fairness and avoiding perception risks. I have seen teams thrive when this is handled proactively. It prevents back channel gossip and reinforces psychological safety. So at the end of the day, just reiterating, it's an antidote. It's not a policy, it's not something, but it's an antidote. And just adding to what Chandra said, we have faced, similar situations with a few clients, particularly with US clients. So something that I came up for one of an edtech client was, so we created a kind of, 10 things, a list of 10 things that are need to be ensured during any meeting, internal or external. And that was created as a backdrop of our Zoom or Google Meets. So when we are there in the meetings, we have to make that. And it's not only us who have been trained, but the other person also would also be seeing that, okay, these are the something that we need to follow. And there were small posters and these things were, awarded. So we had, tremendous bonusly Amazon coupons. These kept rotating. And we were like, okay, this person has shown in all the meetings internally as well as externally, these things followed maximum. So now it's, related to recognition and rewards. And we saw more people actually following it. And the meetings, the culture in the meetings helped the whole organization grow.
Wonderful. It's such a simple but a powerful approach. I mean, and easily doable. Just put it up there as background. Wonderful. I think, all of us here should note this one down. Really, really wonderful. All right. Moving on to the next question, Prakhar. How can employees say no when asked to do something that feels off or unethical, especially if it's coming from someone senior or influential?
Okay. So a thing that often comes up, but luckily I have not been party to such requests, to just to clarify as well. But one thing that has happened is that this is a general trend when I particularly look at the Indian context. People in power tend to have these kind of things coming up every now and then. So what, from a guidance perspective, what I would say is, see, the first thing is that we need to maintain our relationships with the stakeholder. So if the understanding a person comes with is that, hey, I believe this is unethical, and straight away no, maybe that will put a dent into the relationship. So here we will have to take a step back, and I always tell people that you should first go ahead and clarify on the expectations. Is it that maybe the other party was not actually asking for something that was actually unethical, or what was the case? So the first step I believe in such situations is that employees should seek a better understanding of what's being asked from them, and is it in line with the company's policies and standards. Like, if I talk about something that we were just discussing in this call, was maybe when Chandra highlighted about some travel policy deviations. Now, those may not be something which is gravely unethical, like a senior leader requesting some of his team members, somebody, to just get a booking done through a regular travel agent instead of a company's authorized travel partner. Now, that may be not in line with the policies, But is it unethical? May not be like that. But at the same time, if some senior leader comes to an executive and just tells them that, can you just change this data aspect and all, which is essentially a misrepresentation or a falsification of data. Now, that may be a very, very grave offense to begin with. So, the first thing that one should always do is ask a simple question that, can you please elaborate on the expectations from me? Now, once as an individual, I'm clear that these are the expectations, the next thing is to assess whether it is ethical or not. If it is, go ahead, execute it, no concerns on that aspect. However, if you feel that no, the I have some doubt or maybe the request seems to be questionable, then the thought should be very clear and we should very transparently, the employee should inform the stakeholder concerned about their concerns. And at the same time, just make a request that maybe we should be going ahead and taking a view from some or the other relevant stakeholder, maybe a skip level manager in this case, the HR partner for that particular unit, or maybe the legal POC, whatever that may be. And for that, I always advise employees that what you should be definitely doing is that highlight it, but make it like a hypothetical situation. Instead of calling out somebody and saying that this is how it is being asked and all, take it as a hypothetical situation, seek some clarifications, get their views, and accordingly have a discussion with the stakeholder. Lastly, if after everything that we have done, we are very clear that the request that is being made or the expectations from us are purely unethical in nature, somebody wanting us to cover up for their mistakes or maybe look at doing something which is not legal in nature, and so on and so forth. So that's where I'm very particular that the employee should stand firm without the fear of reprisal. At the same time, all that we need to do is we need to just ensure we are not looking at things from a personal aspect. It should not be on that aspect. We should simply be that this is a professional disconnect. Maybe there you can go ahead, ask my manager about this particular thing, and then maybe we can have a better discussion on these aspects. So that's how I feel that as and when there is something unethical being asked to be done by me, my simple question pointers are: first, I clarify; second, I assess; the third is I act.
Wonderful. It's so simple. Clarify, assess, and act. I mean, if people can just stick to this way of thinking, things will be much easier to handle at work. Thanks for sharing that insight, Prakhar.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next round, let's bring it back to structure. So, the first question for you, Chandra, is in remote or hybrid teams, how do you maintain a consistent ethical culture when behaviors are harder to observe and the norms may vary?
Yeah, thanks, Srimay. So typically in a virtual world, culture kind of leaks through the cracks unless you deliberately try to seal them. And I think the hardest ethical blind spots in remote first setups aren't the ones which are malicious but unmonitored. And maybe what I can give you some examples of are like let's say there's a Slack conversation ongoing, and there's somebody senior passing a sarcastic line for the junior employee, like, wow, did you really just ask that? And everybody laughs. And the person that day, say he logs off early, nobody checks in with them because they're a remote employee, and there is some level of disconnect in remote first organizations because you don't get to see the person's body language in front of you. Um, Another example could be where like video off kind of a bias. So there are people who prefer to keep their videos off no matter what meetings they are in, audio video off. Now what happens is, imagine a scenario where a team member who consistently keeps their camera off is gradually excluded from strategic conversations, not explicitly but possibly where they're no longer the go-to person. So kind of like out of sight, out of mind, you know. Another thing where Wristy mentioned about back channeling gossips, but even think about back channeling decisions. Say two stakeholders close a small budget change privately, like offline, even though there's like a shared Slack thread for transparency for everybody. No, these are not really policy violations, but they are more like a culture drift. And they kind of, all of these things add on and they erode the equity, confidence, and inclusion that we try to build in the organization. Now, few things that we tried at our organization, just as you know attempts to ensure that this culture drift doesn't happen. So we set digital behavior norms explicitly. Like back when pre-COVID, we used to have office etiquettes. We now have something like Zoom or Google Meet, decency, or Slack decency kind of norms. For example, if somebody asks you a question publicly, uh, don't just like message with LOL or net or something like that. Or if you need something from somebody, don't just constantly keep tagging them repeatedly. It kind of creates a bit of a unrest kind of a feeling for that person. Uh, the other thing is like made behavior visible, not just their performances, in a way where we built a so Slack is what we use at our organization. So we created a Slack workflow which lets team members give kudos. So we have something called as Thank You Thursdays. So in Thank You Thursdays, it's not just about who achieved what or what outcomes are being achieved by the specific team members, but it's also about uh, kind of demonstrating what went behind that outcome. Like what did they demonstrate? Was there fairness, inclusion, ownership? These kind of things also get called out and appreciated, which kind of sets the tone for what kind of a culture we want to create in the organization. Another thing is where like some sort of remote red flag guidelines for managers, kind of drawing on what Prakhar and Wristy mentioned, but think of these more like prompts and not really as punishments, like Wristy mentioned. So why did this person go quiet after that joke? Think about it. Or has one particular person been dominating every meeting, or are we avoiding direct feedback because it feels harder online? So these are all things that managers may encounter, but may not know how to deal with it, or may not even be able to assess, okay, if something like this is happening, there is a problem somewhere behind that needs to be addressed. So these are just basic questions that we sorry, leave them with to ensure that they're able to assess the situation at their end. And maybe as an ethics leader, what I may want to just mention is that in remote workplaces, people don't just watch what you do, they are also watching what you allow. So it's a thin line at some places.
Absolutely true. A follow-up question, Chandra. So, do you actually have a documented do's and don'ts for like for communication channels, like what to do or what not to do, kind of a thing?
Yeah, so it's not just about communication, but there are multiple things that we have. So, like I said, so there's like a host of articles that are made accessible to anybody who joins the company. Like because we have remote hires, initially these used to be like long, lengthy sessions of orientation. Now everything is made documented and made available online, so that irrespective of what location or which country you're joining the organization, you have access to the information which is going to help you, get accustomed to or adapt to the culture of the organization. Because if you're coming from an organization which is where you go to office 5 days a week versus where you're working from home 5 days a week, there's like a lot of shift. It's like a cultural shift. It could be even a mindset shift that is required. There are people who may not exactly thrive in a non-social environment which is work from home. And again, like you don't want to spend your entire day doing meetings, right? You want some focus time for ensuring you have time to do the real work also. So there are a lot of things that we have in place as documented things, do's and don'ts for our employees, even things like how to work async with people, how to work with people from different countries, understand their country's culture. A lot of stuff is available as resources to us. But of course, we do expect that our employees take that time, go and look for the right resource when they need it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. So many brilliant ideas coming forward. All right, moving on to the next question for you, Wristy. From both employee and leadership perspectives, what are the key do's and don'ts that help prevent ethical slip ups?
Sure. Again, citing a good example that I refer myself is of Salesforce in this area. They publicly discuss the ethical dilemmas, even in their AI development teams. They created internal ethics advisory boards to help both leaders and employees navigate tough calls. And that's a great operational example of embedding ethics into business rhythm. So based on this, some questions, the basic ones that we see for us, it's basic because that's how the culture and the business grows together. Like leaders, they should model vulnerability. They can admit mistakes. When they say, here's how I handled a gray area, it opens doors for the employees. Also, leaders do lead by example. Their everyday behavior sets the tone far more than the policies. There are a lot of documents online. And as Chandra rightly said, even as HR, when the marketing team was making a policy on communication and marketing and other channels, I don't think I've ever read full. It was as and when needed. I used to go search for the words and then just read it and work accordingly. So, yeah, and for employees, it's always, as Prakhar rightly said, ask questions when in doubt. For example, I'm not sure if this is okay. Can I check with someone? It is a strength. It's not a weakness. It takes a hell lot of a guts to get up and ask a question from anyone in a corporate environment, and particularly when we are working remote or hybrid. Other thing is, do speak up early. Small discomforts often point to bigger patterns. We accumulate what we are thinking, we overthink, and then whoosh, the person exits. Something that we always say that leaders they should not is don't rely only on training and policies and HR and other leaders. Behavior is caught more than taught. This is a statement that I was said by my marketing head. If your actions contradict your code of conduct, the code loses the meaning. So there is no point. Also, as a leader, don't assume the intent. A lot of times we see that, as rightly said, if someone is not there or someone has not opened their cameras, we just assume their intent. And hence we don't involve them in other calls or decision making. Seek context before reacting to potential missteps. Something that I see most of the leaders say, we don't have time. We need to take out time. We are leaders. And that's why we are leaders. For employees, don't assume silence as approval. Just because something wasn't flagged doesn't make it right. Ask the question, probably rephrase it, but ask. Don't let they probably know better because they are leaders, they are managers, they have more experience. Don't let that stop you from having direct conversations. So, a quick list that worked across the organizations that I have worked for or supported is, do's for everyone, including, leaders and employees both. Do encourage open dialogue. Equipping managers to listen without judgment when concerns are raised. Equipping employees to raise concerns without assumptions. Create a safe reporting spaces. We always say Google Forms are anonymous. Google Forms are not anonymous. The admin person can see everything. But then there are other places where it actually becomes anonymous to the leadership. Particularly when we speak about GDPR and privacy laws, something that is valid at most of the places globally, and India is still working on privacy laws. Reward ethical decisions. Recognition and reward attaching to any value, anything gives results. Even if they delay outcomes, publicly appreciate when someone speaks up or does the right thing. It encourages others also. Some don'ts, that is don't dismiss minor violations. It's just a small one. Okay, we could do it. They are often symptoms of bigger cultural cracks. Don't assume, as we said, don't assume people know better. Ethics isn't just instinct. It's modeling, reinforcement, and then remodeling. And let's not keep the policies in folders. Let's keep the policies alive, not only through onboarding refreshers or trainings, but a continuous team talks in one-to-ones, ask me anything sessions, have a chat over coffee, and a lot of engagements that can happen. I think for me, one of the biggest hit was when I was working for a social sector organization, Charities Aid Foundation. One of our biggest shifts came when we introduced real life case studies in ethics training and in the policies. So it was not a detailed policy, no. As I gave an example in the start of Salesforce, we gave examples of similar companies and where we want to go, where we want to grow in our policies to explain. People connected more to what they might face rather than just theoretical rules. And frankly, we had an audit concern when it came to ethics, given the concerns that were raised in India. And while we, kind of introduced this kind of a policy for the first time, it was just a two-page policy. That's it. With, of course, with some pictures also. Otherwise, books without pictures, people usually don't prefer to go through. So we introduced that, and within a year, when we had another audit, I can remarkably say the ethical slip-ups was zero, just zero, wherein we were around 18%. Approximately, they went to zero within a year while the policy was introduced. And this was done only for India. Once the audit gaps were zero, things were replicated at other places, at Charities Aid Foundation, at other locations globally.
Wonderful. That's such a insightful perspective. It highlights how, just how important it is to maintain this consistent behavior across all levels of an organization. And I loved when you said the three simple words: ethics is instinct. It just simplifies everything. It's so true. All right, moving on to the next question for you, Prakhar. What should a strong code of conduct include to help prevent bias, favoritism, or misuse of authority? And who should employees feel safe reaching out to if they spot a concern?
So, something where I would first want to emphasize on at least the limited understanding that I have for the code of conduct. So, in my limited understanding, I believe it is the bedrock of an ethical and inclusive workplace. It is that one document that you can always refer to understand how do we treat one another, how do we make decisions, how do we uphold the integrity, regardless of what our roles are or who the seniority levels in the organization. Now, when we talk of a strong code of conduct, it is one that not only outlines the expected behaviors, but at the same time reinforces the values, creates that framework that builds trust with the employees and gives them that confidence to speak up when something doesn't feel right. Now, to ensure that we have a strong code of conduct, one of the things that we all need to acknowledge is that, at least from an HR perspective, 2 plus 2 will rarely be 4. We operate in a lot of gray areas. And that's where, and it is not possible for us to outline all the possible permutations and combinations that may be there, or that may arise in the future as well. So when we talk of a strong code of conduct, I am clearly of the view that it should be inclusive, flexible, and it should be kept as wide and as open as possible. The only intent of keeping it as open for interpretation is to ensure that there are no incidents that happen which my code of conduct cannot foresee. Now, when I talk of a strong code of conduct, one of the things is that a single document may not be able to just call out what all is required from an action perspective or from an org stance perspective. So that's where I believe that code of conduct is to be supported by a suite of complementary policies. Like if I talk about Gameskraft, here we do not just have a code of conduct, we support our code of conduct through our gift policy, our whistleblower policy, our, uh, I would say, the disciplinary policy, and the conflict of interest. Now, when you look at all of them together, is when you will be able to create that framework that ensures that these biases, favoritisms, or instances of misuse of authority are suitably addressed. In At the same time, in each of these policies, in the right segments, we definitely ensure that these things are being called out. That should there be an instance of bias, how will we react to it? How do we act on it? And maybe help employees with a few illustrations of the same so that they are able to understand that when we say bias, is it just that, okay, somebody is a great performer in the team and somebody is just praising them? Is that bias? Or is it more like that, yes, somebody is just giving some undue advantage to somebody for some reason that is not is not a public knowledge right now? So that's what we do. Now, when I talk about who should employees feel safe reaching out to if they spot a concern, so here what we have done is in our policies, we have clearly mentioned that we have our HR partners who can always go ahead. If the employees can reach out to them and discuss the concerns if at all they have, or if they find any concern to be more precise. But then at the same time, in each of these policies, we also have certain authorities outlined, like the ethics officer of this organization, the complaint officer, or the compliance officer, whom also they can reach out should they be of the view that maybe I do not trust this particular HR folk or anybody else for that matter. Lastly, what we also ensure is that we always call out a very clear thing that should you be feeling like when I was talking earlier, we talked about relationships at work as well, that we cannot maybe hamper those relationships. So that's where we ensure that we always give the employees an option of also reporting it anonymously. And like I highlighted earlier, setting the expectations is important. So our policies very clearly call out that if at all you are making a complaint, even in an anonymous format, that's absolutely fine by us. But the only expectation that we have is should we want further information, you should at least maybe through that anonymous ID help us with the same. It cannot be that you just make a random complaint and understand that the company will be doing all the things possible. Company will be doing it, but then there may be times when if there are no evidence to substantiate certain things, then we may have to drop those concerns. Lastly, from a misuse of authority perspective, yes, we what we do is that we have a non-retaliatory policy in place, which basically very clearly calls out that should there be a concern raised by anybody, and if it is against anyone in the org in and who is in a position of authority, they are explicitly informed not to take any action that can be construed as retaliation, so that the person feels confident that yes, I spotted something which is not in interest of Gamescraft and I have flagged it and the organization has supported me. We also extend the ambit of this particular provision by even letting the other employees know that should you be aware of such retaliatory practices happening in your span, you are also equally responsible for flagging them off. Now, with this kind of a setup, a strong code of conduct, a set of supporting policies, we try to ensure that we are able to give employees that confidence that as and when there is an ethical dilemma, an ethical issue, or a concern that they find out, they can definitely reach out. And the organization has built those systems, those processes, those frameworks in place that ensure that their concerns are suitably addressed.
Thanks, Prakhar. It's wonderful to see, what a amazing ecosystem you have at Gamescraft, and really underscores the need for both clear policies and trusted channels of support. Really amazing insights. Thanks a lot for sharing it with us. All right. So now we open the floor for audience questions. If you have any questions for our speakers, please drop them in the chat. Think we have a shy audience. In the meantime, I just wanted to ask Chandra and Wristy too regarding the code of conduct. Just one quick question that, according to you, what is one practical and essential policy you believe every company should include in their code of conduct? Just the most important point from your perspective.
You would like to go ahead, Chandra?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the most important things is about, you know, so harassment of some sort or whatever you want to call it. So harassment doesn't necessarily mean sexual harassment and posh. It could also mean that you're creating a unsafe work environment for people around you. For example, if you have a manager in a team meeting who's constantly screaming and yelling at his team members, "तुमने ये नहीं किया, तुमने वो नहीं किया." Imagine the kind of mental impact it is going to have on the team members. They may not be even able to speak up about it. So although we have policies in place, but even Wristy agreed that not everybody goes and reads them all the time, and they leave it for the time when they really really need it. So what happens is these things, because employees are not sure that they can raise their voice against it, like Prakhar mentioned. So he mentioned it multiple times that having a non anti-retaliation policy in place that helps. But again, if the employees are not aware that such a thing is available to them, they will not be able to take action. So I think these two things kind of go hand in hand, where you have that safe space being made available to the employees to speak up and feel safe to tell what they are experiencing. At the end of the day, if your workforce is not, I mean, mental well-being is a topic that we really care about a lot at Cimpress, and if that is not working well for a workforce, a whole organization is not going to work well.
100%. Wristy?
So, when we speak about code of conduct and ethics, what we believe is it's not a practice or a policy or a poster. It's not a one-time policy or a one-time workshop or a quarterly workshop, Kia and over. It's a muscle we build together in the micro moments of decision making, reflection, and accountability. And it starts with leaders walking the talk consistently and visibly. So, when we actually speak about code of conduct policy or code of ethics policy, as I said, I like how Netflix works. They don't have policies, they have a few slides on everything on their expectations and what others can expect out of them. So that is something and done. And secondly, kind of work that not having a literature that people have to read, but kind of a Q&A of real life examples to have a food for thought. That is something, kind of helps us as an organization and as a leader to move from compliance mindset to culture shaping. And that starts with showing that how we work is just as important what we deliver. And that cannot be defined in an SOP or a document or something. So yeah, that's something that I have learned over the time and has worked, for the companies that I have worked with, and it has worked for my own company and my work also.
If I may just add on to what Wristy
Of course.
mentioned, if that's okay. I think this is something that I typically have said it a couple of times within limited internal forums. That policy enforcement, and again, trying to link it to the mental well-being aspect. So policy enforcement is at times looked at as, that kind of like a mental harassment by employees. But I think it is up to our leaders to actually sponsor that thought, or sponsor that mind shift change, that policy enforcement is not harassment. I think Risti had, or Prakhar had earlier mentioned, that it's about giving clarity, it is about giving transparency. So it is about our leaders actually making that statement, and across different forums in the organization, which tells the employees that this is not mental harassment. And you can understand that not every generation of employees will take things in the manner that you intend. So sometimes employees perceive accountability itself as unfair, especially when it's something new to be done, and again, if they have seen examples of it being applied unevenly across the organization. And so going back, so it's not about policing employees, like Christy said. It's about protecting what we stand for at the end of the day. And I think that's just one thing that I feel that maybe is missing in multiple organizations, not just ours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the essence that matters at the end of the day, and not just that checklist.
Yeah, I think
Wonderful.
people need to see the leaders, do the hard thing or the right thing over the easy or the popular one. I think that's when the trust gets built in the organization.
Absolutely. It's so wonderful to, see companies like Cimpress and Gameskraft and Wristy's organizations, the examples you gave, I mean, doing these things. Wonderful. So once again, any questions for these three fantastic speakers? All right. So before we close, for those of you who want to take this conversation further, especially with your teams, we have launched a concise, actionable workplace code of conduct course, and it includes a lot of things that we discussed today. And now I feel maybe I should add a bit of new things to it based on what I learned from these guys today. And it's designed for employees and managers, and it covers practical scenarios. So, yep. Now, thank you guys for this wonderful, insightful, real world perspectives. It's clear that ethics at work isn't just about doing the right thing, but it's about creating the ecosystem, the environment where people feel empowered, protected, and supported to do the right thing. So thank you. Really, it was such an insight. There are so many great points. And thank you, audience, for joining us. And stay tuned for our next month session. Until then, keep walking the talk. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Srimay. Thank you, everyone.